for your Mock 1 class. I have still continued to learn so much about the mock classes. I've been privileged to be part of those Fast Pass workshops sponsored by VIPKID. So I know exactly what VIPKID is endorsing about how to teach and approach the slides. I also had the privilege of being part of a great coaching pilot that VIPKID had. One of the side benefits of being in this project was that mentors and referrers came together for maybe the first time to collaborate and talk about what worked and what didn't work. For the first time, some of us referrers got to hear from mentors about what they're actually looking for and what the thinking is. And we as coaches and referrers got to give feedback into the system. We've seen a lot of change happen as a result, and as a result, I'm more familiar with the mock class material and how it should be taught than ever. All of this experience has allowed me to grow, and I'm about to pour all of that new knowledge and experience into this video for you. In this video, we are going to walk through every aspect of the lower level mock class, letter X. I'm not just going to give you examples of how to teach the slides, but I'm going to prepare you to actually think through them and be genuinely prepared to teach the class effectively and, most importantly, in your own style. In this video, we'll talk about the I do, we do, you do principle, timing, pitfalls of certain slides, student outcomes, using the screen in the classroom, and more. I'll also insert some advice about where you can gain some points during your mock class and how to avoid losing some of the points that you have. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. We're going to start off with the slide that says VIPKID, letter X, Mock Class 1. This is the slide where you say hello and meet your student. You want to get into the mindset right away that your mock class mentor is a real, actual 5-year-old child. Think about how nervous that little child might be meeting you for the first time on video. You'll want to assure them, calm them, and greet them in a friendly way. Hello. My name is Teacher Hope. What's your name? Hello, John. How old are you? Are you ready? Let's go. Remember, you've got a real child on the other side of the camera. And when you say hello, they may want to say hello back. Offer a pause. Remember to listen. Start to get to know your student on the introduction slide. Here's a tip. Some of the points for establishing rapport with the student are heavily based on the hello and goodbye slides. Sure, the mock class mentor is watching the entire mock class to see if you establish rapport, but they are specifically looking for rapport on the hello and goodbye slides. So make sure that those are friendly, warm, and not rushed. Slide 2 is your reward system. And to answer the question that a lot of people have, yes, you can use a different reward system than this one. I have some tips for you to maximize the points you get for your rewards. Give your rewards often and regularly throughout the class. In my opinion, 5 or 6 rewards in a 25-minute class is ideal. So you'll want to kind of space those out. Your reward should be level appropriate. So for a lower level class, the kids love things like giving bananas to the monkey. They might not be so excited about collecting flags of the world. Maybe that would be an appropriate reward for your upper level mock class. Your reward system should be visible. There's a lot of speculation going back and forth about whether this is required or not. But here's my take on it. If most of the mentors prefer it, why not make sure you please those mentors who like it? It's always a good idea to have your rewards visible because then the student can see their progress. So go ahead and plan for a visible reward system. On the note of being visible, If your rewards are very small, the student may never know what they've received. When you're presenting an award, make sure it comes up to the camera so the student can see what it is. And ideally, it will be something large enough that they can see from a distance. When you give your reward, make sure that you offer sincere praise along with it. Good job! You get a dino! One of the challenges of presenting rewards is that we can't use a lot of language that's not part of the prior knowledge or part of the target language. So it can be difficult to talk about the rewards. However, there are certain phrases that are used over and over again in the VIPKID classroom that the student does begin to know and are generally accepted by the mock class mentors. In fact, we even teach and endorse using these phrases in the FastPass workshops for VIPKID. When you do a good job, you get a dino. Good job. You get a dino. Avoid throwing in some other things like, you are so smart. That was awesome. I like dinosaurs. Do you like dinosaurs? Try to keep it at just those 2 sentences for the reward system. When you do a good job, you get, and good job, you get a. This will help keep your incidental speech as low as possible. Pitfall for this slide. Remember that this is a warm-up, so it's a review. We can't invest too much time here, or we won't be able to get to the target objectives for this class. Speaking of timing, if you've got 15 minutes to do a class and you've got 14 slides, that's about a minute per slide. Time yourself on each slide and see where your time is going. If your time is going on the warm-up slide and you're speeding through the target material, you'll need to flip that. This slide should take about a minute or maybe a little less to complete. Remember to allow time for the student's response. Now you've got 6 items on this page, but you can do it. The key is limit the objectives that you try to accomplish on this page. If you up the objectives, it will take longer. Here's what I mean. You could ask, what do you see? You could have the student answer, I see a tomato. You could teach tomato, tomato. And you could circle the tomato. Circle the tomato. All of these objectives take time, and you're going to need to decide how you're going to approach this slide. It helps your student if you set up a pattern that the student can use. Generally, a pattern will help them get through material. Maybe for this slide, you'll simply want to use the sentence that's suggested, I see a tomato. Have the student repeat, I see a tomato, and then circle the tomato. Since this is a warm-up, you don't want to reteach. Tomato starts with T and elbow starts with E. Be careful how much you teach on this slide. Student output for this slide. Do have the student make some choices on their own. It wouldn't be great if you're just saying, I see a tomato, having the student say it back, and then you're circling the tomato. Have the student choose where some of the items are, especially toward the end of the slide. That will be getting some student outcomes on this slide. Pitfalls on this slide. Mock class mentors will be making mistakes during your mock class to see if you will correct them and see how you correct them. Very often, students, when they make mistakes on this level, they're mistakes with missing articles, wrong articles, or synthetic phonics. The student may leave out the article, I see tomato, or the student may give an incorrect article, I see a elbow. Since this slide contains one of the few words that starts with a vowel and would need the article an, I'd be listening in particular on this slide for your mentor to make a mistake here. Then you'll want to correct the student with gentle modeling. I see an elbow. Yes, good job. Have you heard of I do, we do, you do? This technique is how we as VIPKID teachers model for our students and then turn the responsibility over to them. You'll want to demonstrate that in your mock class. So for example, when you say circle the tomato, if this is the first item that you're circling, circle it on the screen. Do the first item on the screen as I do so that you can show the student what it is you're wanting. Now we're on to review. Remember again, this is not the main part of the lesson, so we want to get through it quickly but effectively. What are your objectives for this slide? We don't want to add too many objectives to it. A good place to start is with the teacher directions. Teacher makes letter sound. Student matches big and small letters. Student repeats letter name and sound. So according to the teacher directions, the student outcomes are that the student draws a line, the student says the letter, and the sound. Remembering that it's a review, you want to scale back on the objectives that you have for the slide. For example, you may be tempted to do S, S, S. What sound does S make? S makes the sound S. Draw a line. Even at the fast pace that I did that just now, we would be hard pressed to finish this slide in a minute. So you'll need to scale back. Remember your objectives for the slide. Student says the name. Student says the sound. Student draws a line. You might do this way. S. And you're circling those letters on the screen. S. S. Draw a line, and you'll draw that first line for the student as part of I do, we do, you do. That's one way of doing it. It's very minimal, and if your student is struggling, maybe this is a good way. You also might do it this way. S. S. S makes the sound S. Very good. Draw a line. I would suggest using something consistent. It's your call. This is your mock class, and you need to adapt to the student. I think I'll keep saying that. Another review slide, the K and eh sound slide. This is one of the most difficult slides on the lesson. I see a lot of teachers struggling with this one. First of all, as we've discussed on the prior slides, identify your objectives. What is it that you want the student to do on this slide? You want the student to match the word with the sound it starts with. That's pretty hard to do. And you also need to communicate that to the student using a very small bit of vocabulary that you have. How will you do it? Look over your target sentences and your prior knowledge to find some sentences and some words that can help you get the results you need on this slide. Establishing a pattern here helps with this very difficult slide. It also really helps to relinquish part of the responsibility to the student. Here's a technique I like to use, but you can use a different one. Circle the object I'm going to talk about. Bzz. Bing! Elevator. Good. Then I circled the letter I'm going to refer to. Eh. Elevator starts with eh. Draw a line. Now I draw this first line just to give the student an idea of what we're doing on this slide. Key. Again, I'm circling the key. I'm circling the K so that they can identify them on screen. Key starts with K. Good job. Draw a line. Now, I'm saying draw a line. I will also make the motions. I want to start enticing the student to join in. I want to be able to move on to we do in this section. I've given them two solid examples of how we're doing this with two different sounds. Maybe they're starting to make the connections. Let's try it with we do on the next one. Egg. Egg. Egg starts with. Now the student may say eh. If they do that, you'll need to have them say the whole sentence. Egg starts with eh. But it's a good start if they say eh. It's getting them there to where they can do it independently. Now you might say egg starts with and the student sits there blank. That's where on We Do, we're still helping them so we can give them clues. Wait a second, see if they get it. If they don't, eh. Egg starts with eh. Draw a line. Now this time, don't draw the line yourself and see if they can get it. Again, we're adapting this to the student. It depends on the student's response, how much we'll let them have for the next one. But we want to give them the floor to speak, to draw their lines, time to think, room to make their answers and show that they know it. This is a good slide to get some student outcome. The student needs to be making choices. If you do the entire slide for the student, or you say the sentence pattern and the student is just copying after you and maybe drawing some lines, that's not really student outcomes. We want to see the student making that choice. You can help them make the choice initially and gradually pull back. If the student ultimately doesn't make the choice, that's okay, you tried. But you do need to give them the opportunity to do it, and you need to set them up for success. You'll need to think through that. What technique do you think is the clearest for this review? Try it out, imagine the response of the student, and make your choice. I'll give you 2 good rules to think about when you're deciding how to navigate your slides. Number 1, if the way you've chosen doesn't make sense to you, it won't come across to the student either. Number 2, if you don't have a clear objective of what you want the student to do, the student won't do it. So be careful about approaching a slide just saying some things and hoping for the best. Identify what you want the student to do, what you expect their response to be. What is your objective? How will you get the student to do it? Again, it's your mock class and adapt it to the student. Look at the slide number we're on, and we're just now beginning. This kind of shows you it really is important to get past all of that beginning material. On the previous slides, you saw there were 4 to 6 items on every slide, but when we get to letter X, look how clean it is. That's because this is new material, so we want to use all of our time on this slide teaching this material. It's new to the student. What do you think about this slide? If you think this slide is boring, think again. This can be one of the most fun and interactive slides for your mock class. Big X! Active TPR, fun voices, small X. 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 X makes the sound makes the sound X. All of this activity, all of this variation in voices will be fun for your students. So I encourage you to jazz this one up with some TPR, with some voices, and with some fun. Remember, you're teaching letter X for the first time, so you'll want to repeat it. You're teaching the letter sound for the first time, so you'll want to repeat it. And you're teaching this sentence, X makes the sound X, for the first time, so you'll want to repeat that. If you thought you were going to get through this slide quickly, think again. It's the main material of the lesson, and with all the repetition needed for the student to really learn this, you'll probably take pretty close to your full minute here. What is a pitfall for teaching this lesson? From what I've seen, the synthetic phonics on this one are kind of hard. As English speakers, we never say the X sound without a preceding vowel. We always say ax or x or ix, but saying x is a little difficult for some. To practice this, think the vowel sound. You can think eh, but then only say x, x, x. You'll also need to watch for the student on this one. If they need correction, you'll be prepared to correct them too. Fox is new material, so that's why it's the only thing on the page. This is a new target that you need to teach the student. So it will take more time than say it did to review tomato, robot, and all the things on the previous slides. On these slides that have only one item, you have plenty of time for repetition, to bring out your TPR, and to make the class fun. I encourage you to take advantage of these slides and bring it. Since this is new vocabulary, how will you make it fun? You can do some fun TPR. Fox. Fox. You may have a picture of a fox. Make this slide memorable and fun because this is the main part of the lesson. On new vocabulary, we want repetition. So you'll need to get the student to repeat this word. Fox. Very good. Fox. Yes. Fox. Very good. Incorporate your TPR or your stuffed animal with those repetitions, and your student will be having fun. You also should make sure to use this sentence pattern on this slide. I see a fox. And have the student repeat it. Very good. Now the teacher directions on this slide mention a question. Questions can be super difficult, and that's part of the reason that I said on the earlier slides, maybe don't ask so many questions and limit your objectives. They're difficult, and maybe we can use them more on the real main part of the lesson. Here, a question is suggested. What do you see? Now, when you say that to the student may say back, what do you see? You can model with a puppet, with a stuffed animal, even with your cutout picture of a fox. What do you see? I see a fox. Very good. What do you see? And then you'll correct as needed. You may need to be careful not to get stuck here and watch your time. If you're absolutely running out of time, maybe you won't do the question. Maybe you'll just do fox 3 times and the sentence, I see a fox, a couple of times. But if you can manage to pull in some question and answer modeling on this slide, I think your mentor will be impressed. The next slide is ox, and it's very similar to the fox slide. You can pretty much handle it the same way. This is new material, so you'll need to drill it, and drilling can be boring, so you'll need to think of some ways to make this fun. Voices, TPR, props. These are the things that can make repetition fun. Ox. Encourage the student to do the TPR too. Have the student say the new vocabulary 3 times and have them say the new sentence. I see an ox. Activity time! Now on this slide, you don't need to do a lot, so it's kind of a freebie. Go ahead and get through it quickly. We're transitioning from learning the new material to using the new material. Some teachers will bring out a pom-pom and wave it. They'll use a clapper or just their body language to say, we're going to have fun. Speaking of point and read, this is a good place to talk about transitions during your mock class. You don't need to announce the slide point and read because that will mean nothing to your student. It will sound like wah, wah, wah. Another note on transitions is that we just simply go with it. When we change the slide, we're there and we begin doing that slide. Don't announce it like, okay, now we're going to read these letters. Let's learn some new vocabulary. You don't need any of that. For this one, I'd change the slide and begin. Ah. No introduction. Change the slide. Ah. Notice I'm using a prop for this slide. We need some kind of means to guide the child's eye to help them blend these sounds. Ah, x, ah, x. If we don't have control of what they're looking at, they may be looking anywhere and we're saying ah, x, and the student is saying ah, x. Or they're looking at the screen but they're looking at you and they don't see you drawing lines on the PowerPoint. A prop will usually gain the interest of the student, and something like this really offers you the control that you need to guide the student's eyes in a blending exercise. Let's teach the slide. Ah. X. Ah. X. Very good. Ah. X. We're waiting a little bit longer here to show the student that we're joining and to give them the opportunity to begin filling in this sound themselves. Ah. Yes. Ah. Now we're going to help them, but I think it's important on this slide not to just say ah and x and ax, but to coax them into making those sounds connect themselves. They may not be able to do it, but since we're teaching them to read, we need to get them started about joining sounds. T, ax, and have the student say it. Or you might say t, ax, t, ax, tax. We're teaching them how to combine sounds and how to read. This is a great slide to get a student outcome, or to at least demonstrate to your mock class mentor that you're trying to get a student outcome. So make sure you give some time for the student to make that connection and do that reading. Now, I've advised using a prop here, and it's a pretty complicated one because you're needing to share the screen with it and write on it. That's a lot of prop management. You need to get an idea of how much prop management you can do. You need to have about 3 props for this lesson, and I think this is an excellent one. However, if you use this prop incorrectly, you could lose a point. For example, if you use it like this, ax, ax, and the student can't see it, then the mentor may have to remove some points in the prop area. In that case, it would be better not to have this prop than to get a point taken away for not handling the prop correctly. You'll need to practice on the screen if you want to use a prop like this. If you're very close to the camera, you won't be able to share the space. So you're always going to want some framing that allows for good TPR and for sharing. You're centered on the screen, you raise up your prop and you just pivot. I'm standing up right now, but if you have a swivel chair, you can do the same thing. I'm just pivoting my feet. Pivot with a swivel chair. Now suddenly you're sharing the screen. Pitfall on this one, reviewing the sounds. A makes the sound ah, and X makes the sound x. Or what sound does A make? What sound does X make? These little things will take up a lot of your time. Everybody loves the memory game. This slide is the most hated slide. And the next one that go with it to form the memory game. How are you going to teach this slide? Again, you don't need to introduce it with the word memory or let's play a game or anything like that. Just go right into it. This slide definitely has its challenges. It would be a good idea as you're preparing to just identify and list out those challenges. What are the things that could go wrong? What are my objectives? What do I want the student to do? What are we trying to accomplish here? Remember, your method needs to make sense to you. What do you want the student to do here? Because if you don't know, the student won't know. You want the student to repeat the vocabulary and really get it, and then use it as a mental exercise on the next page. That's what I think the objective is. So how will we make this interactive? Well, the cards don't flip over. Don't make the mistake of thinking that they will. It looks exactly like this. Nothing will happen on the screen. Yeah, isn't it fun? Another challenge or pitfall that you could face on this game is forgetting that it's fun. This is a game, so try to have fun with it. I'm going to share with you 2 very popular methods for doing this slide, and there are many more, but I've seen these 2 methods used with VIPKID. One in the FastPass workshops, and the other one in the Zoom workshops. Let's take them one at a time. The first method reviews the vocabulary and uses drilling a sequence to help the student retain what they're seeing on the screen and use it on the next screen. Something like this. Remember, circle whatever you're talking about on the screen. So circle X. X. You'll circle fox. 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 Ox. Circle the ox. After you've reviewed the vocabulary, Then you can drill the sequence. X, fox, ox. X, fox, ox. A sing-song might help. Then you'll flip to the next slide that has the rectangles on it. Now you need the student to find what you just learned. How can you have the student find what you learned? You can't use the word find, right? It's not on the list. You can't really use vocabulary like where's the fox or remember where the fox was. None of that is anything the student will understand. How about circling? Yeah, if you have the student circle something, they're finding it to do so. Let's have them circle it. Flip to the next slide, and the corresponding pictures are under the sticky notes. We'll say, circle X. Circle X. Now the student knows circle, and the student knows X, but do they know what we're doing? Maybe not. Let's give them a clue. So you'll peel off, and of course yours will correspond with the correct PowerPoint. You'll peel off the letter. Circle X, and go ahead and circle the first X on the screen for them. Remember, I do. This is the first step. Let's go to the next one. Circle the fox. The student pauses, the student doesn't know. Give them a second. Do they need help? Do they need a visual clue? Show them what's behind the paper. Fox. Circle the fox. Now this time, don't circle the fox for them because we're on We Do. We want to see if they can do part of this one by themselves. Give them some time. If they do it, great. If they don't, you may need to model a little bit more, or you may need to do it on the screen and then maybe have them repeat on the screen. Then you'll move to ox. Circle the ox. By this time, the student probably knows exactly where the ox is, and the student will probably circle ox. But if they need a visual clue, you can point here, you can make an imaginary circle, or you can circle on the screen. Just remember, give them time to do it themselves because this would be the you do portion. So that's one method to teach the memory game. The other way I've seen, and it's equally popular, and I've also seen it in the workshops, is to do one set of items at a time. So that would look something like this. X. Now you circle the X on the screen like I'm doing. We're on I do. X. Very good. X. Very good. Draw a line. Okay, so you can use draw a line here. Then immediately flip to the next slide. We're just going to go ahead and do X right now, but I'm going to do most of it because we're on I do. Hopefully the student can join in. Now I circle the blank card where the X will be so the student can start understanding. I get it. It's exactly like the one we just saw. So I'll circle it and I'll say X and have the student repeat it. X and have the student repeat it. Draw a line. I'll draw it in the air and I'll ask the student to draw it. Then we'll go back and we'll do fox. I'll circle fox. Fox. Very good. Fox. Circle the other fox. Have the student say it. Draw a line. I'm going to leave the line drawing to the student this time so I can see that they know we're connecting these two things. Then immediately flip to the next slide. Circle fox. Circle fox. And maybe the student will circle the fox themselves. Draw a line. Ask the student to draw the line and allow them to do that themselves. Repeat with ox. Every time you're relinquishing more responsibility to the student. So when you do the last third of the slide and you say circle the ox, they should be primed for success at this point. Review the vocabulary while we're doing this. Don't turn this into a line drawing and circle drawing only slide. In either case, with whichever method you use, or if you use a different method, the student needs to be repeating the vocabulary and demonstrating that they're making those choices. Get very comfortable with knowing what your objective for the student is on this slide, anticipating the student's response, and then you'll be able to have fun with this game because it is a game and it is fun. Yeah, it's fun. There are kind of two things that need to happen. There's a first stage where the teacher reviews joining X to various sounds like or t, And then there's a stage where the student makes a choice about which letter would fill in the blank for mix. Just like I said with the point and read slide, I think a visual is good here. And I've seen a lot of really great ones. Blocks that maybe have an I on one block and an X on one block, and they're joined together so they're not falling all over the place. And then maybe they'll have an S and they'll do X and teach that. And then they'll say S and teach that. And then they'll say 6. This is really good for teaching the student how to join those sounds. That would work to show how you add this sound to this sound and it makes this new sound. That's a really great idea. It's a good visual. You can do it in a number of ways. You could do it with a card that says X and a card that has letter M. You could even use your whiteboard on this, and maybe you'll teach X like this first. X. X. Rix. And then you would go through all of the sounds. Rix, ticks, mix, showing the student how to join those together. Just remember that if your prop is kind of clunky or falls apart or is hard to manage, that it might be a risk that you don't want to take because you could lose those points like we talked about before. Try it out and see what you think. That's the first objective of the slide. On the second stage of this activity, you'll be saying a word or an imaginary word like mix or rix, and you want the student to choose which sound that word starts with. If I say the word rix, the student needs to choose. I suggest showing them the options. You could also write the options on the screen. Rix. Rix. Circle. Rix. And then the student could circle the letter that Rix starts with. I think the important thing is to help them on the first couple to get them going. Kicks. Kicks. Circle. Show them how you're doing it. And then you'll move to we do, where maybe you have a new pair of letters and you'll say ticks. Ticks. Circle. T, t. So that would be kind of we do. You'll get to the point where you're saying 6. Circle. S. And the student will make the choice between the S and the T. I think these are great ways, since it's kind of difficult to communicate right to the student without the word right. But again, this is up to you. Does it make sense to you? Are you clear about what your objective is here? What do you want the student to do? Do you have a clear way for the student to demonstrate their choice? If you have that, then you have a good method for teaching this slide, and you're probably getting some good points for student outcomes. Pitfalls on this slide would be using phonics that are incorrect, like ta instead of t or ra. You want to make sure that you really know the synthetic phonics, because that counts a lot when you're teaching kids to read. Another pitfall might be that you try to teach too much. And I think we've said this a lot. Adding objectives to the slide, unless you've got a lot of time, you might not want to go into what sound does T make. Focus on the objectives that are given to you. Time every individual slide and see where you're spending your time, imagining the students' responses. You'll also want to keep the class moving by always cupping your ear if you want the student to speak. If you don't cup your ear, the student or the mentor doesn't know you want them to speak, and so they might sit there waiting. You don't want that to happen. That will eat up your time. So use the cupped ear to get the mentor to speak and keep class moving. Modeling is another way that you'll keep the class rolling along. The student doesn't know how to do what you're telling them. Maybe you need to show them a little more. I highly encourage you to model by writing on the screen itself, as I do, so that you can show the student how to do it. Then the we do and the you do will move faster because the student has seen how to do the activities. Oh, it's over. Now you need to say goodbye. Quickly rush out of the classroom. No, wait. Make sure you say a proper goodbye to your student. You don't want to just say goodbye and that's it. Have some interaction at the end of class because remember, the mentor's probably really watching the hello and goodbye slides for the report. Recap your rewards. Good job, and show them how many rewards they got. Tell them goodbye and wait for them to say goodbye too. The goodbye should be interactive as well. Go ahead and say goodbye again because when do we actually say goodbye one time to a friend? Make that goodbye meaningful and cheerful. It's the last thing your student will remember about the class. Thanks for watching this step-by-step guide to planning your mock class. You're showing real initiative to understand the lesson and to make it yours. If you haven't signed up for VIPKID yet, please use my referral link. It's in the comments. Or if you have already signed up, but you'd like to add me as a referrer, I'd love that. And the instructions to do that are also in the comments. Thanks for watching.